What a race it was at Silverstone, and it is myself, Chris McHardy, and I'm joined by the man who this week was christened the Headless Chicken.
You know, where there's smoke, there's fire. We had a guy on the podium who was on his debut year, the iPhone came out.
Oscar said, I better not speak because I'm going to get myself in trouble if I do. He was as peed off. Welcome along to another edition of the Pit Talk powered by Ethara. Myself, Chris McHardy, Robert Doornbos. I will start by saying a reminder. All eyes, the countdown is on to the Formula One Etihad Airways Abu Dhabi Grand Prix, the final race of this 2025 season, December 4th through to the 7th down at Yas Marina Circuit. Do check out all your ticket information on abudabigp.com. Right, it is the morning after the day before, looking back on the British Grand Prix. What a race it was at Silverstone. And it is myself, Chris McHardy, and I'm joined by the man who this week was christened the Headless Chicken. Robert, how are you?
Hey, good morning, Chris. Yeah, I'm fine. I'm here in Ibiza. So I celebrated the Hulk's podium position last night.
I think you just got in from the nightclub a few hours ago, Robert, by the looks of you. You're all well? You enjoyed the race yesterday?
No, I'm very well. I really enjoyed it. This was a British Grand Prix, like one for the books, right? I mean, the weather has played a huge role throughout the weekend. We had heroes on Saturday and losers on Sunday. Everything was in it. And we had a guy on the podium who was... on his debut year, the iPhone came out. So you can imagine how many races he's been trying to get onto the podium.
Yeah, we're going to get to Nico Hülkenberg. We're going to look back on all the big talking points from Silverstone. But I did make that little quip at the start. Headless Chicken, Robert. Let's put this one to bed. I was, of course, making light of the fact that Max Verstappen has been in the press this past week. He's not too happy with you, Robert. What's the story?
Well, I'm very happy that he's watching our podcast, the Pit Talk powered by Ethara. So it means he's on to our, analysts and targets that we are talking about. And that was the future of Max Verstappen at Red Bull Racing, or we should better say the future of Max Verstappen at Mercedes. Where there's smoke, there's fire. And I know Jos very well all these years. And if he gets this excited, it means I'm getting very, very close to the truth. And yes, he won't be on my Christmas card, or we won't go on holiday together. But we know each other professionally quite well. And as I have him as a source, I have many other sources at Red Bull. So I know a little bit what's going on behind the scenes, and that is part of my job. And I'm happy to share it here in the podcast.
So has he picked up the phone to you? Have you two individuals, have you spoken? Or is there going to be a bit of fisticuffs the next time you see each other?
No, it should be fine. We have a gin tonic and everybody's happy. We, like I said, we're professionally, we get to know each other better and better after all these years. He's been one of the few Dutch F1 drivers like myself, but in particular, he's the father of four-time world champion Max Verstappen. So he's, very, very well known. And we can connect and we talk about the future stuff, what's going on in F1. But this is getting quite intense, and you feel the pressure from Red Bull Racing, also from the Verstappen camp, because there's so much going on. After our podcast last week, the whole media just blew up about the Mercedes story, which means we're close.
And that's it, right? Because I go back to the first episode of this podcast, which was, of course, an opportunity for us to discuss the future of Max Verstappen. You said it then. You said, listen, all roads, in your opinion, lead to Mercedes. And since then, this story it's spread like wildfire. So to your point, Robert, there's no smoke without fire.
Exactly. And of course, the pure details of each contract cannot be out there on the streets. But the framework, like we discussed about the exit clauses, it is in there. It's there and it's activated. They need good weekends to keep Max at Red Bull Racing. They need everything to come together, and it doesn't look like it gives him the confidence to stay there for the near future. And Toto Wolff is not signing his second driver, as Kimi Antonelli will be signed. Then there's George Russell just waiting and waiting and waiting. And George had the hope that maybe at the British Grand Prix he would get a contract offer from Toto Wolff. But that didn't happen, as we all know, because there's still contract negotiations going on between Mercedes and Max.
Okay, so I just want to put this one to bed. You and Jos, you're going to be okay. You'll see each other and you'll give each other a high five and all will be well in the world.
Definitely. I'll go to a Grand Prix soon and I'll share a selfie with myself and Jos drinking a Red Bull or a gin tonic. Who knows?
Okay, you heard that here first. In terms of the race itself, Rob, what a race. You and I were just talking before, obviously, recording this podcast, and it's back-to-back weeks in which we've had just two phenomenal races which do so much for the sport. A lot of people talking about it today. Yes, okay, there's what transpired throughout the race. The rain helped things, Nico Hülkenberg's story as well, but I guess chief among them, Lando Norris, back-to-back wins. The leads at the top of that championship for Oscar Piastri is now down to 8 points. We've got a proper title tussle, my friend.
Yeah, all roads lead to Abu Dhabi. And obviously we're hoping to get a good championship battle going on there until the last lap, maybe until the last corner between the two teammates. It doesn't look like anybody else will be involved in this championship fight. But yes, McLaren is, the best package, like we discussed in our latest podcast. They have to deliver each weekend in, weekend out. And therefore, this particular weekend in Silverstone was, satisfying to look at, because on a Saturday afternoon, qualifying at this track, Chris, this is one of the tracks where you separate the boys from the men. This is Big Paul's country. I mean, the Silverstone, flat out through Copse, Beckett's, the S's. If everything comes together in qualifying like we had in a dry qualifying, the drivers jump out of the car and their hands will be shaking like this because the adrenaline is just going through the body. High G-force. It was an airfield in the past, so it's flat, but it's so fast. I remember the G-forces when I was testing and racing there in F1. It's truly something special. And next to that, it's the home race for many of the Formula One teams. One of the teams in particular, Aston Martin, is based like 500 meters outside the main gate. So there's a lot of pride in the British Grand Prix. It's one of the special ones throughout the year that you really want to win. And as a Brit like Lando, to win it then in front of your home crowd must be an amazing feeling. I mean, he won Monaco, he won Silverstone. For him, his season is probably already done. But at the end of the day, he also wants to become world champion. On pure pace, I think Oscar Piastri should have won it. He proved to be the faster McLaren driver throughout the weekend, but luck wasn't on his side. I think he got penalized very harshly. We'll talk about that later. But it was Max Verstappen was the story of the weekend again, particularly on the Saturday afternoon in qualifying.
Yeah, incredible stuff from Max. We'll touch on that. I'm interested to pick on what you just said there, though, Rob, about the fact that you felt Oscar was the quicker of the two McLarens, and yet he's the man that comes away with second place. There was that 10-second penalty after the second safety car was deployed. He was found guilty of braking. Max Verstappen was none too best pleased. He would eventually spin off himself not too long after it. What did you make of all of that? You've said there that you found it quite harsh on Oscar Piastri. He was pleading with McLaren late on this race that, listen, guys, if you think it's harsh, let me retake the lead. They weren't having any of that. What did you make of the whole story?
No, true. I mean, yes, first things first. I mean, Oscar was leading the Grand Prix. It was wet, difficult circumstances, particularly for Max Verstappen, because let's not forget, he was the man in pole position. Then it was Oscar Piastri lining up beside him on the front row. But it was Max Verstappen who was quite bold to choose with his engineering team for a low downforce setup, which means you don't have maximum wing. No, you go for the lower version, which you use in places like Monza, tempo speed, high straight line speed. But it also means on braking, it's more difficult. And in fast corners, the car is very knife edge. So it's very tricky to lose the rear end to just crash off doing high speeds. In particular, in qualifying, everything came together for Max. This Q3 lap will be one he will remember for the rest of his life. So well-deserved pole position. But then the worst things happened for him on the Sunday. Rain, which means in the rain you need a race car with a lot of downforce. And as we know, there's a parc fermé rule. You cannot change the car from Saturday to Sunday. No big changes, wing settings, nothing. You can change the tires and you put fuel in, and that's about it. So Max was struggling in the high-speed stuff, but was still running in second place behind Oscar. And then the leader behind a safety car, when the lights go out, which indicates safety car will be going into the pit lane and will go back to racing, as soon as the leader decides we're ready to go. So he basically controls the pace, but you're not allowed to do erratic driving. That's what they call it. So braking, accelerating, because what you get then, especially in these conditions when it's wet, that there's like a harmonica effect that everybody in the back thinks, okay, we're going, but suddenly the leader brakes and then everybody will crash into each other. We've seen this in Mugello a few years back, which was a big crash, and it looks stupid if it happens. Oscar basically just accelerated when the lights went out of the safety car. He decided to hit the brakes one more time to warm up the brakes, so you can warm up the tires two ways. You can warm them up by driving from left to right, and you can warm them up by braking very harshly, and then the temperature will rise inside the rim into the tire. Well, the last one, that's what Oscar did. It sort of caught Max off guard, so he had to pass Oscar and almost hit him, and had to take avoiding action. The stewards thought this was done on purpose, and it was erratic driving, so they gave him a 10-second penalty added up until his racing time. A lot, too much, to be honest. And I think it's not fair for Oscar, because he was leading. He was the man in charge. 5 seconds later, Max spun off at the restart, which means, it made it all look a bit more intense than it really was, to be honest. The stewards shouldn't take that in consideration, that Max spun, and that is a result of Oscar braking. But it looked like it, and it made it worse for the Australian.
Exactly that, Rob, because afterwards, Oscar said, I better not speak because I'm going to get myself in trouble if I do. He was as peeved off as you're likely to see the young Aussie. I've not necessarily seen him quite like that. He's been pretty calm. He's a pretty kind of demure individual. He's laser focused. We've touched on that in a previous edition. Yet it's the most, I guess, disappointed and most frustrated I've seen Oscar Piastri. And for what you're saying, Robert, he's got a point.
He's got a point, definitely. And I mean, the team should have come onto the radio straight away and discuss this with the stewards. And the thing is, we don't know if they see the real-time data. Normally these decisions are also taken after a Grand Prix, which is terrible for fans. If you look at the race and you see a winner and suddenly his win is taken out, like we saw in Canada, for example, where George Russell was leading. He also braked behind the safety car before the lights went out, and it was Max that also came alongside him. And then George was saying, "Oh, Max overtook me. Stewards have to check this." So, I mean, they have to take each situation into consideration, and they cannot compare it to like what happened in Canada. But that didn't end up in a penalty. So I think Oscar was done quite harshly. And yeah, as you know now, you shouldn't say a lot after a race, because the stewards are quite on you if you are talking negatively about the decision, etc., etc. But on the other hand, Oscar was not allowed, in my opinion, to ask the team to swap positions with Lando, because Lando had nothing to do with this situation. Lando was just doing his race, and suddenly he got thrown the lead of the Grand Prix into his lap, and he was like, okay, I'll take this one. I'm a Brit and I can win my home Grand Prix.
You're right to say that, because Oscar was on the team radio, and I'm thinking to myself, wait a minute, this would leave a bitter taste if Lando was then told to move aside for Oscar to come through and win. There was, 185,000 at the race yesterday, 500,000, a record for a Formula One weekend. They would have been up in arms, as much as I'm sure they've got no problem with Oscar Piastri. If Lando Norris if he was to have moved aside, we would have had, I think, a riot at Silverstone yesterday.
A riot, yeah. That is hard to leave the track, I can imagine, with so many Brits. No, that wasn't obviously the right call to do so. And McLaren was quite straight to that. Guys, this is the position, 1-2, we'll take it. British Grand Prix. Just bring the cars home and we'll talk about it after. I think Oscar proves his point throughout the weekend. I mean, to win here, his manager, Mark Webber, I was texting with him throughout the weekend because I remember when Mark won the British Grand Prix for Red Bull, it was really his highlight of his career. He said the British Grand Prix is something special. The trophy looks a bit like the Wimbledon trophy. You know, it's a big thing. And Monaco, Silverstone, those are the two races you want to get off your bucket list if you are a winning Formula One driver.
Yeah, we'll get to Nico Hülkenberg. I've got to ask, because I was talking to one or two of the production staff before this podcast this morning, and we're talking about how difficult it is in the rain. We're sat on our sofas at home watching it. It's great drama. It really does add an extra layer to Formula One, but the spray, you can't see. What is it like to be behind one of those F1 cars in the rain?
Well, first of all, there are drivers that are really happy in dry conditions and they want the weekend to stay consistent, and they don't like when the weather changes and throws, everything in the mix. There are in particular British drivers that are grown up racing cars in the wet, on slicks, we should say. So the driving feeling also in Holland, look at Max in the wet. Normally he's on fire, and yesterday he was just struggling with the balance of his car, and he had the minimum amount of downforce out of everybody. So it was a miracle that he actually finished the race and didn't crash the car, apart from that small spin. But driving in the wet is something different, Chris. I mean, I know you're not driving a lot yet in the dry even, so we should start in the sun with you once you get a license. But then we'll get you out there in a wet session and see what you think of it. In Formula One cars, we work with aerodynamics. And the aerodynamics basically make sure that the car is sucked onto the ground. But what it also does is it throws up a lot of mist and water up into the air. So if you're leading the pack, it's fine. You have a clear vision and you can see everything and just take your lines as you want to do so. You also take different lines in the wet, we should say. So you never drive the normal racing line because that's rubber on rubber and that's very slippery. So you always drive an outside line from the outside to the inside, and you're looking for the grip levels, trying to avoid puddles, because puddles are like standing water and the car's ride height is so low. So if you hit a puddle, the car will just aquaplane off the track, and there's not enough talent that can save you out of that situation. But if you're behind another car in a racing situation in the wet, I mean, back in my Minardi days, I was not leading the pack, as you know. I was running in the back, and if it was wet in a place like Spa-Francorchamps, for example, the spray, if the guy wasn't running in second place, was already incredible and difficult to see where you were going. I just could see a wall of water. I didn't even see cars. So the moment you see a car, it's the red blinking light, but then you're too close, like Isaac Hadjar did with Antonelli, and you just hit each other from the back. So what drivers normally do is they look at signals and signs of like commercial signs or a tree as a reference for a turning point. So you're not looking straight, you're actually looking to the side, doing 300 kilometers an hour. It's a weird, scary situation to be in. And I always say, if you're not allowed to go flat out on the straight anymore, or if it's not possible due to aquaplaning, they should abort the race. But yesterday's conditions were still on the limit, but they were still doable to race in Formula One.
So to be clear, Robert, you're actually, what you're saying there is you're driving blind. And it blows my mind a little bit. You're looking left and right for reference points to know whether you're turning right or turning left.
Yeah, exactly. And if it's like a wet session and you come there a year afterwards, you just hope that they didn't move the tree or something, or they moved the sponsor sign, because that's your reference for a turn-in. During a weekend, it's something you take in your system, and obviously you look at the weather predictions, and if it's wet, then you start preparing yourself. Okay, I need a clear visor. Normally what like the ski athletes do as well, when they go down the slope, they have like this yellow colored visor or very light clear visor. So you can see some more depth into the puddles and the rain. I mean, it's quite difficult.
Bear with me on this one. I always remember, and I'm name dropping here a little bit, Robert, Michael Phelps, legendary Olympian. He was over in these parts a number of years back, and he spoke about the fact that he would train with the legendary swimming coach Bob Bowman, whereby if water got in his goggles, he would have to swim blind. Not to panic, keep his heart rate the same, and he would know how many strokes to get the turn, of course, and then back. And I actually think he won a race at the Rio Olympic Games where he said he was actually blind, but it was all kind of muscle memory and just remembering. Is that the same with you guys as Formula One drivers? Are you acutely aware of where the turns are and at what time the turns are across these different circuits?
Yeah, it's a bit like what you see at the ski slopes, right? These guys, when they prepare themselves, they close their eyes and they're like left and right. But that's more like into a qualifying session that you really, okay, take a deep breath. I'm going to do this. I'm going to hold my breath maybe for a minute and a half around this track, and I can only breathe down the hanger straight to recover a little bit, because some of these corners are incredibly fast, really, really impressive. And if it's wet conditions, you have to find a balance between sort of natural fear of the situation and awareness, but also be aware of what's going on around you, because like you saw with Isaac Hadjar yesterday, he didn't see anything, but he kept the foot pinned because it's a straight. If you start lifting on a straight, people behind you will just hit you. So you trust in your colleagues, your Formula One teammates, and your competitors, that at least everybody in a straight line is going flat out, and then the braking zones will decide if you're a boy or a man, basically.
And what were you, Rob? A boy or a man in the rain?
Yeah, I was a man, to be honest, because the most races I've won in my career was in the wet. I always find it comfortable in the wet to dance a little bit, to find because not every lap was the same. In dry conditions, every lap is the same normally on a racetrack, because you just have the tire wear to focus on, but the turning points are the same. In the wet, every corner on every lap was different, because there could start become a dry line, or there could be more rain coming, particularly on circuits like Spa-Francorchamps, where it's 7 kilometers. On one part of the circuit it could be raining, and the other part it could be drying up already. So yes, I enjoyed always racing in the wet.
There's a lot of chatter, there always is, about simulator work and getting repetitions in on the simulators. Pardon my ignorance here, Robert, but can you simulate wet conditions on the simulator?
You can. I mean, the simulators nowadays are very impressive, Chris. I mean, you can really simulate the type of tarmac. You can simulate high temperatures, low temperatures, wet conditions. Back in my days, the simulators were not that good. And so, but then on the other side, on the plus side, there was not a budget cap. So testing was unlimited. And I remember going to the high-tech test circuit in Paul Ricard, which was used for a testing facility, because you could do like 40 different layouts on the circuit, but there were also sprinklers built into the tarmac. So with one dot or one press of the button, the whole track would be wet, and you could do wet weather testing under the sunshine in the south of France, 30 degrees, and start testing these Michelin or Bridgestone tires. Back in the days, that was very interesting and very valuable data. But now, with the innovation of data in Formula One, these cars nowadays are driven by data and built to win. They can also simulate it on a simulator, which means it's cost efficient, because you don't have to travel with the whole team to a circuit and simulate wet weather testing. You can do various circuits in one day, and you can do hundreds of miles. And if you crash the car, you just press enter and you start again. So the simulators really is a game changer in Formula One.
It's class. I love that. In terms, we talk a lot about the kind of wet weather masters. And, when I was growing up, Michael Schumacher was certainly that. I mean, he was already the best on the grid, for goodness sake. Then it would rain, and that would really, it would really kind of strengthen the view that he is, if not the greatest, one of the greatest of all time. Who's the greatest wet weather driver that you've ever seen?
That I've ever seen, well, I have to compare it to the people that were on the track with me back in the day. So it has to be Michael Schumacher. I mean, what he could do in the rain was very impressive. We talked about it earlier in our Pit Talk podcast to sort of simulate the perfect F1 driver. And I think I chose 3 of them in the wet. It was Michael, Lewis, and Max, because all 3 of them drove historic races in F1. I think with Michael, it was particularly interesting because there was the tire championship with Bridgestone and Michelin. So he really built the Bridgestone tire around his driving style. Lewis Hamilton have has shown amazing stuff in Silverstone in his debut year. I think he lapped the whole field in the wet. The driving ability of him is outstanding in these conditions. And Max Verstappen, we all know the races in Brazil and any other wet race, he's always there and up there, apart from yesterday. So yeah, those three are, in my opinion, the greatest wet weather drivers we have. But we should also say Nico Hülkenberg since yesterday.
Absolutely. Let's go there, because if Lando Norris, listen, we always celebrate the winner of a race. Grand Prix are not easy to win. Lando Norris the victor, but in a lot of ways the story of the weekend, Nico Hülkenberg made his debut in 2010, 239th start. He had the unwanted record of the man with the most starts, and yet had never stood atop the podium. And yet, after 5,593 days, he was atop of the podium. He was third, of course, yesterday. An incredible result. I think it was Sauber's first podium since the Japanese Grand Prix back in 2012. Kobayashi it was who was on the podium on that occasion. So some 13 years they've waited. 19th to 3rd. What a race.
What a race. What a race. And I mean, it's Jonathan Wheatley is the new team principal there. And he obviously moved from Red Bull to Sauber to, look after his interests and his dreams. And his dreams was to become a team boss. And at Red Bull, there was not a chance that he would become a team boss with Christian Horner there firmly in place. So he decided to leave that organization and go to Stake Sauber, which is becoming Audi, as we know, from next year. And I spoke to Jonathan early in the year in Jeddah, and he was just getting to learn the team, and all focus is on next year. But they were bringing some upgrades. And since the Spanish Grand Prix, when they brought a big upgrade for the floor, which takes about 65% of the downforce, the car was just flying in the hands of Nico Hülkenberg. Since Barcelona up until yesterday, he scored more points in that car than Max Verstappen did in his RB21 at Red Bull. Think about that. Not even a midfield team. They were last year, and they were really struggling. But they were a good bunch of people. They hired some new people like Jonathan. And I think Jonathan could really make a difference already in the pit stops. I mean, Sauber's pit stops look way more smooth than they've ever done. And that was also his strong asset at Red Bull Racing. He was always on them, on these guys. This is the time to shine. We have to find the right people in the right time that can perform under pressure and deliver a pit stop in 2 seconds, not once, twice, but maybe 3 times on a Sunday afternoon. And that together with the car development and the experience, because like you said, Nico has been waiting for it a long time, and he has a lot of experience in Formula One at his age. And that came to good use yesterday in tricky conditions. If you could see, his rookie teammate spun off in the opening lap, and he finished 3rd after having started 19th on the grid. I think there was not one soul on the racetrack and on the world following Formula One that wasn't happy for Nico.
Do you know him well, Robert? Have you come across Nico in your travels?
Yeah, I know him well. He speaks quite well Dutch. He lived in the Netherlands when he was doing go-karting. So his Dutch, initially there were only the bad words. But now he also learned some other words. And he's a friend of the show, especially with the Dutch broadcasting team in the recent years. He was on the show quite often. Very charismatic guy, open, no bullshit, no politics, just a flat out racer, and hugely talented, because he's been shifting teams as well. Like you said, many days, 239 Grand Prix. But in the meantime, he drove for almost all the teams in the paddock. I think he had 8 different cars under his bum. And he delivered yesterday, finally.
And of course, he's a Le Mans winner as well. He won with Porsche back in 2015. So he's proven himself to be a real class act.
Definitely. I mean, that was fun. He was one of the first drivers that asked his team back then, is it okay if I can look after my dreams and my goals? And the Triple Crown is a goal of not all the drivers. The Triple Crown is obviously Le Mans 24 Hours, Monaco Grand Prix, and the Indy 500. Well, Fernando Alonso has been looking after this path if he could do it. But the 24 Hours of Le Mans, in recent years, the popularity of that endurance racing grew a lot. So there are more drivers in the field that would love to do Le Mans. And Alonso followed in his footsteps and also won it, but Nico Hülkenberg did it in his first try. And yeah, that shows how talented you are. If you can adjust that fast to a different series in a different league, yeah, it shows you're special.
Now, knowing him as you do, Robert, would Nico, with the Hülkenberg family and friends and the Sauber team, would they have had a right good celebration last night?
I think they're all they're happy that it's not a back-to-back race weekend, so they have some time to recover, and rightly so. I mean, this feels for them as a victory. I mean, finishing on the podium after that position. I know Jonathan, with our English colleagues on the grid, said, it's wet, it's Silverstone, anything can happen, because particularly when the rain comes in from one side, and they have all these. I was impressed by the way the teams have helicopters flying around the circuit and communicating to the factory, but also to the team on track, of the development of the rain, where it was going, and how the drivers can prepare themselves for the perfect pit stop. Because yesterday everything was about timing your pit stop in the right time, switching tires from slicks to inters and back in the right lap. You rather do it half a lap too soon than a lap too late, because if you're on slicks in wet conditions, then it's a really long track to make the pit lane, and you can lose up to a minute. And Nico, pitting in lap 10 already was spot on, and then later on in the race he did it again, and he had pressure behind him, because there was nobody that successful at this racetrack as Lewis Hamilton, and he was in his mirrors trying to hunt him down for a podium. But yeah, the German thought, today is my day.
Yeah, exactly. Just on that, 'cause I think you raise an interesting point there. In terms of mentally as a driver, when you know there's a weather front coming in, when you know that the race is going to be stop-start, when you're not really aware of what the next hour and a half is going to look like, how mentally difficult is that? Because I found yesterday watching it, one or two of the drivers are relying on their race engineer more than anyone else. One or two others maybe a little bit more comfortable with the uncertainty. How did you manage that?
Well, that's basically it. And it shows again that Formula One is a team sport. So as a driver, yes, you need to have your talent to keep it on the black stuff, and to be able to deliver your laps and communicate with the team. And from going from slicks to wet weather tires, intermediates in this case, it's normally always the driver that makes that decision, because he really feels what you can and what you cannot do with the slick tires in these conditions. Because if you lose the tire temperature, then it's like driving on ice, Chris. It's really impossible to keep 1,000 horsepower under your right foot and keep it on the black stuff. If it's the other way around, if it's from intermediates going to slicks, then the team will always help you, because they obviously have more information of other drivers doing their laps on the track, or track conditions. And if they see there's no rain coming in anymore, they will communicate it to you, and they'll say, okay, this is the right time now to switch to slicks. But it's working together with the team and asking for information. And you could also hear on the radios, I like to listen in some of the drivers, it's Charles Leclerc and his engineer, the communication was terrible again, as we know from Ferrari. It's shouting to each other, nervous, and there's no chemistry at all. But the other drivers, like with Oscar and with Nico in particular, and with Max, they just decide, okay, now it's time to come in, and they use their information from the team in a really good way. So F1, it's not an individual sport, it's a team sport, and yesterday it proved again.
Yeah, Nico Hülkenberg, we do say congratulations to him again. I've got a funny feeling he's going to be partying for a few days. And on that point, Robert, it's one of the kind of aspects of the opening two shows. Your anecdotes are what I wait for on this show, because, well, I've got to ask, when we're talking partying animals, and Nico, you can forgive him for being a bit of a party animal for the next couple of days, you must have been to one or two incredible parties in your time. Who's the biggest party animal?
Well, I cannot say all on this podcast, because I think my wife is also looking at this podcast, so we have to keep it sort of in the boundaries. But back in the days, it was none other than Kimi Raikkonen. He was quite special. When I met him, I was like, one of those Finnish guys. They don't speak a lot. They're social, yes, but it's short answers, yes and no. And I'll take you back in 2005 at the Japanese Grand Prix. No, first at the Chinese Grand Prix, because it was back to back. So there was a Chinese Grand Prix, and then there was a Japanese Grand Prix. And in China, Kimi had a great result, and he said, "Tonight there's a party in my suite." Okay, so can I join? Yes, you can. All right, I'll be there. And I walked in there, Chris, and I couldn't believe my eyes. There were his Finnish ice hockey friends, big boys with beards. You could fit right in. And they were all drinking with not one glass of vodka. They had each a bottle each, because they can handle it probably better than some European dude that will jump on the table after 2 glasses. But they were drinking the vodkas and everything, and it was like 3 o'clock at night. And then Kimi had a great idea of not flying straight to Japan, but first fly out to Las Vegas. Why not? I mean, it's a Sunday night, and on the Thursday you have to be at the track in Japan. So they booked a jet and they flew to Vegas with their friends for a couple of days. And I'm sure the team boss back then, Ron Dennis, must have thought, "Ooh, is this going to end up well?" But yeah, it's Kimi. And on the Thursday at 5 o'clock, I arrived at Suzuka, all fresh, because I leave with my trainer on the Monday. We trained on Tuesday and Wednesday to get some alcohol that was in the system out of the system, get into the zone, into the focus, prepare for the weekend, eat well, sleep well, and hydrate well. Not with vodka, but with water. And then Kimi showed up as the last driver in the driver's briefing. That starts on a Thursday afternoon. If you're too late, you get a fine. But yeah, you don't want to be late. Well, he showed up 1 minute before 5 with his sunglasses on. He walked in. You have to sign your name normally, and he just put a dot on it. So he didn't have a lot of energy. And he sat down next to me, and I looked at him, and he took off his glasses, and his eyes were red, completely red, and he looked tired, with the black marks under his eyes. And I said, "I was Las Vegas," or is it a rhetorical question, a stupid question? He said, "Everything that happens in Vegas stays in Vegas, but I had the time of my life." I said, "Okay, good for you." And then practice starts. I think he had a mechanical issue. Qualifying, he crashed the car, and he started 16th on the grid next to me in the Minardi. And I thought, okay, I out-qualified Kimi Raikkonen. And then the next 1.5 hours, a miracle happened. I couldn't see him anymore after 3 corners. He had the launch of his life, and I was fighting for my life to keep the car on the track, and he just blitzed off in the McLaren, which was one of the fastest cars back in the days. Most beautiful cars as well, if you ask me. And then in the last lap of the race, he passed he passed Giancarlo Fisichella for the lead on the outside into turn 1, which is a big balls corner. And he won the Grand Prix, and everybody was shaking his head like, this guy. I mean, we've all been preparing ourselves mentally and physically, and he just shows up from Las Vegas and wins the Grand Prix from the back of the grid. And I remember that he did the interview when Martin Brundle asked him, "So Kimi, that was amazing. How did you do that in the last lap, that pass on the outside on Giancarlo?" And he said, "Yeah, Giancarlo is..." That was sort of his one-liners after such a heroic performance. So yes, parties, there are some parties in Formula One, but I think we should keep it with this one.
That is an unbelievable story. Kimi Raikkonen. What does that say? Because there might be a lot of people watching or listening to this thinking, well, that makes Formula One sound easy, the fact that he can go off to Las Vegas and party. But what it does do, Robert, it underlines just what an incredibly naturally gifted athlete and driver Kimi Raikkonen was, I guess.
No, that's it, Chris. I mean, this is an example of a driver. Don't forget, he became a world champion. He's the last world champion for the Scuderia Ferrari. He's so naturally gifted. His career skyrocketed. I don't think anybody went as fast as him to Formula One. He skipped the whole ladder. So his management team back in the days were watching him in Formula Renault. So in karting, he was something quite special. He didn't have the resources or the budgets from the top teams, and he was delivering in a small team, driving up front, and really real talent. Talent shows in karting. Then he went to Formula Renault in the UK, and I think he blitzed the whole field. I remember watching one race of him in Branch Hatch, which is a difficult circuit in England. And after, I think, 4 laps in the drizzle, he was the only guy on slicks, and he just was 8 seconds per lap faster than anybody. And that was the moment that Steve Robertson said, his manager, okay, we need to get this guy into a Formula One test. His first test in Mugello for Sauber, he couldn't even speak English. His neck was quite tiny because he wasn't prepared. And it's a circuit that goes anti-clockwise and very fast. And I think after 4 or 5 laps, if I get it right, he was on the same time of Nick Heidfeld, who was back then a very well-known Grand Prix driver for Sauber. So they knew they had someone special and very talented. And if you ask David Coulthard, maybe we should next time he's on our show, because he obviously raced with him at McLaren as teammates. He got almost frustrated sometimes with the amount of talent that Kimi had, because David is a driver that really talks to the engineers and works with the team to make the car better and everything. Testing in Barcelona, for example, David was there on the track early. Kimi would show up 5 minutes before 9 with his hair still in sleep modus, and walked into the garage, put on his helmet, jumped in the car and set a blistering pace. Came back in and said to the engineers, guys, the car is shit in turn 1, 4 and 7. Too much understeer, fix it, see you later. And walked back to his motorhome while David was there talking to the engineers and trying to, prep the car and make it better. So for some drivers, it was frustrating to see how much talent, naturally gifted talent, Kimi had.
Just listening to you there as well, Robert, like, he only, and I say only, to win any world championship is a heck of an achievement. But, when you listen to you there talking about Kimi and having this God kind of gift, if you will, he just had it naturally, and yet he's only got 1 world title.
Yeah, you can say, did he lose out? Should he have worked harder for it? Because normally maybe hard work beats talent when talent doesn't work hard. But I think in his case, he jumped ship at the right time. He had some bad luck at McLaren as well, with tire failures, engine failures back in the days. And and on one side, it's a shame. If you look at Lewis Hamilton, who has 7 world titles, Sebastian Vettel 4, and if you ask these drivers, was Kimi fast? Everybody would say Kimi was blistering fast and he should have won more. But it's also about timing, being in the right place at the right organization. And he did it at Scuderia Ferrari, and after him, Fernando Alonso tried it. Sebastian Vettel tried it. Not the least drivers on the grid, we should say. And they were not able to do so. So it's count your blessings.
It's funny you mentioned timing there, Robert, because talk about wrong timing for Yuki Tsunoda. And I want to take it back to the British Grand Prix. Max Verstappen, we know, started on pole, great Saturday. The race didn't exactly kind of pan out as he would have hoped for Yuki Tsunoda. I mean, it goes from bad to worse. I mean, that Red Bull, and I know we've concentrated quite a lot of time over the last 3 episodes on Red Bull, but they are now done and dusted. I mean, you look at the struggles, certainly that Yuki's having. He just looks, again, I hate to say this, but I'll say it, he's a fish out of water.
Yeah, he does. And it's all about confidence as well, Chris. I mean, if you see that the past weekends, the mistakes he's made, and the responses at the journalists that they say, yeah, I don't know. I just don't know anymore. I'm just slow. It's very hard to get a driver back up there. And if he sees the data never lies. And the data is always showing that Max is half a second to 7/10 faster on the same track in the same car. And throughout the weekend, I mean, look at what Max was driving on a Friday. I don't know if you saw the onboard. He was all over the place with his Red Bull, and he was just, showing his frustration on the radio, is that this piece of shit is undrivable. And then he progresses throughout each session on track to make the car better and suit his driving style better. With Yuki, he's not able to do so, what I understand from the engineers, and he's just getting lost. He doesn't know what he wants anymore from the driving style or from the setup. Red Bull is just hinging on one leg for the past 2 years already, with Perez, and then with Lawson, and now with Yuki. And I think they sort of gave up on it for this year, because there's not much you can do. I mean, in the constructors, they're going to be 4th. No way they're going to end up in the top 3 anymore this year. Now they say the focus is switching 90% already to next year. Yuki doesn't know if he has a seat. Well, they don't know if Max is going to stay. So Red Bull is there's a lot of struggles behind the scenes. And for Yuki, it's just, surviving each weekend. But then his racecraft as well yesterday, Chris. I mean, come on, to get a 10-second time penalty again and finishing last is just, it's just mind blowing in that team, in that organization. That was a top team, and now it's excuse after excuse.
You're absolutely
But
right.
they're not a top team anymore.
They've got 3 weeks to fix it. Of course, Belgium at the end of this month. Over the next 3 weeks, Robert, give us an insight. What are the drivers doing? What are the teams doing? It's a nice little 3-week break now.
Well, there's a 3-week break, and the development will be ongoing. I think normally in the summer break, the teams have to close also 2 weeks, so they cannot work anything on the car for 2 weeks up until the next race in Budapest. So it's about doing your simulation work. I think they should do a lot with Yuki, trying to get his confidence in place. Maybe he can do a test with an older car just to do some mileage. And stay fit for the drivers, obviously, and also enjoy life a little bit. I think Nico should enjoy definitely the next couple of weeks, because this might be his last chance to be on the podium. As we don't know how good the Audi engine will be next year, and he might be up there, but I think this was a God's gift that he was on the podium in Silverstone. So yeah, that's it. Stay fit, stay healthy, and do your sessions on the simulator to prepare.
And we're heading to Spa, one of the most iconic tracks on the F1 calendar. It's a sprint race as well. Did you enjoy Spa? What can we expect?
Spa, Chris, is one of the best racing circuits in the world. I think with any driver on the grid, they will say it's in the top 3. It's up there. It's 7 kilometers. It's one of the longest, next to Baku, the longest circuit on the calendar. It has flowing corners at the difference in heights. It had the famous Eau Rouge corner, where you just go into the dip and you look on a wall of concrete and you go up 100 meters doing 300 kilometers an hour. It's mega. And to be honest, I always went really well in Spa. I won in all categories I raced there, apart from Formula One. And I've great memories to this circuit, and I always look forward to visiting it in Formula One. I'll be there, of course, and I will give you all the updates in our podcast on the Monday. But yeah, this is also for each driver. It's a nice circuit to drive, and it's also about finding the balance, because you can choose, like Max did last weekend. You can decide to go for a low downforce setup, which means you're struggling a little bit in some sectors, but on the long straights you're fast and you can make up time. Spa is the same. So sector 1 and sector 3, you need a low downforce configuration to get the maximum top speed. In the middle sector, you need some wing, because the corners are very fast, one after the other. So yeah, we'll see where they end up, and I'm looking forward to it.
I'm right in saying you finished 7th there, 2005, with Minardi, so you've got fond memories.
Well, 2005 Minardi, I mean, that was the first time I was able to drive a Formula One car at a place like Spa. I mean, having raced there in all the junior categories, Formula 4, I won it, Formula 3, I won it, and then Formula 2, I also won it, and that was a highlight. And then going into basically the straights are getting shorter in each category, because in these junior categories, there's just, you're waiting, letting the engine do the work, and then you get to F1, suddenly you have 1,000 horsepower behind you, 20,000 RPM, and it's fast. It's so much faster than anything you've driven. But you also need a good balance. Like I said, aerodynamics are important. And with Minardi, sometimes they had the idea the wings were just, bolted onto the car, and they say, Bobby, good luck, enjoy the ride. You had oversteer before I turned into the corners, and Eau Rouge, every lap, Eau Rouge, I just hold my breath, and I was like, here we go again. And you go through the dip up into the wall, and it's the wall of terror in a Minardi. But no, I finished the races, and in the Red Bull, I had to say it was way more fun because the car was faster.
Great memories there, Rob. I cannot wait for Spa. It is, of course, the start of the second half of this 2025 F1 season. Conscious of time, Robert, a couple of bits and pieces we need to do. Of course, we need to direct people to our social media platforms at the Pit Talk Pod, and we're welcoming your questions as well. You're willing to take any question, Robert, yes?
Any question. Maybe I need one joker, okay? One.
one joker fair, because we don't want you pissing off Jos Verstappen again. So we'll get a joker in all of that. But do drop us a message. You got any questions for Robert or myself at the Pit Talk Pod is where it's at. You're in Ibiza, Robert. What's the next 3 weeks looking like?
Well, I had a birthday week here. My son was turning 7 and my wife turned 40. So I think we got this covered now in Ibiza, Spain. I met Nico Rosberg here the other day. He's also on the island. Obviously the 2016 world champion. And it's always nice to talk to him about F1 a little bit. So I'm spending a bit more time here on the island. And then I'll go back to preparing myself for the Belgium Grand Prix.
Well, given the fact you were in Manu mission only 2 hours ago, I'm going to let you get some sleep. It is the party island after all. Thank you very much, Robert, and we're going to catch up with you again very soon on the Pit Talk Pod. Top man, cheers, Rob.
Great talking to you guys again. See you soon.
Well, a big thanks to Robert Doornbos. He's enjoying himself on the party island of Ibiza, our very own headless chicken. Jos, if you're watching this, your repost would be welcomed. Right, a reminder, you can subscribe to us on our YouTube channel. That is the Pit Talk Pod. You can also follow us across all social media channels. That is the Pit Talk Pod as well. It is myself, Chris McHardy, Robert Doornbos, bringing the world of F1 to life. It is the Pit Talk, powered by Ethara. Do subscribe, do give us a follow, give us a review as well. Make it 5-star, please. And we'll catch you again for another edition of the Pit Talk, powered by Ethara. Ta-ra for now.